Hello, and welcome to the BCN and Friends podcast, where we have real conversations about learning, leadership, and the lived experiences of nurses and healthcare professionals across the emergency spectrum. Each episode, we sit down with thought leaders, BCN certification holders, and industry experts who share their stories, their insights, and the challenges that shape their work. Our mission is simple: to amplify the voices of those making a difference every day, because your experiences drive progress, inspire others, and shape the future of nursing. We're here to honor that in every episode. Sometimes funny, sometimes serious, and always valuable. This is BCN and Friends, and we're so glad you're here.
In this episode, we're joined by Michelle Novominski. It's a known truth that becoming a nurse doesn't happen all at once. Michelle offers an honest look at how leadership as a student, real-world learning, and early career challenges have influenced not just how she practices, but how she sees herself as a nurse. This episode is called The Quiet Moments That Shape a Nursing Career.
I'm Holly Briggs, a professional development specialist at BCN and one of your hosts for today. I'm joined by my co-host, Michael Dexter, our Director of Professional Development. Hi, Michael.
Hello, Holly.
In this episode, we're joined by Michelle Novominski. We first met Michelle as a senior nursing student at Pace University and a recent recipient of the BCEN Student Scholarship through NSNA. We've been following her since then, and she has begun her new grad orientation. She's finished that, and she's out there as a new nurse, and we just really could not wait any longer to talk to her about where she's at in her nursing career. So just getting that kind of fresh nurse vibe. So Michael, could you please introduce us to our BCN friend, Michelle?
Yeah, absolutely. Michelle Novominski is a registered nurse at Lenox Hill Hospital, where she cares for patients on the cardiovascular telemetry unit and serves in a leadership role on her unit's night collaborative care council. She graduated summa cum laude from Pace University and is a recipient of the American Nurses Association's Future Nurse Leader Award. Michelle brings a broad clinical background from her student nursing experience in the emergency and intensive care units and in the pre-hospital setting as an EMT. Beyond the bedside, she's maintained a continued involvement in leadership, research, and mentorship, having served in executive roles with the National Student Nurses Association, and currently is vice president of Sigma Theta Tau's Omega Delta chapter. Known for her compassion, grit, and curiosity, Michelle is passionate about advancing nursing practice and lifting others up and paying forward the support that made her own growth possible. Michelle, welcome to the BCN and Friends podcast. It's great to speak with you today.
Thank you so much, Holly and Michael, for having me. I'm really looking forward to speaking with you guys on my nursing journey thus far.
Well, Michelle, when we first met you, you were very involved with the National Student Nurses Association, NSNA, as I said earlier, and reflecting on that, because I was a student nurse at a certain point in my life, even though it feels so long ago, and I really did not know much about NSNA. I think that I was just so focused on clinicals and doing nursing school. I didn't even kind of have my head up to see that, but you certainly did. And so what inspired you to take on leadership roles as a nursing student? And how do you feel that has kind of shaped your growth as a new nurse?
Definitely. So I first heard of the National Student Nurses Association during my first year of nursing school, and I felt that it truly aligned with my sense of purpose as a nursing student, and it would really allow me to help grow into the student and nurse that I am today. And even as a student, I really wanted to contribute to the profession and advocate and just help shape the kind of nurse that I was becoming and hope to become today. And the organization itself just gave me this space where I could really speak up, support my peers, and feel connected to something bigger than just myself. And it made nursing really feel less overwhelming and provided a space where I can connect with students and organize events that would help bring everyone together on and off campus. And being involved and eventually stepping into leadership really shaped how I see myself now as a nurse. And I truly learned that early on, leadership doesn't mean knowing absolutely everything. You can still listen, you can show up consistently, and, even speak up when it feels uncomfortable. You might not know everything, but even just asking questions and putting yourself out there can mean so much more. And that carried straight into my practice where I work now as a nurse on the cardiovascular unit. As a new nurse, I would always kind of put myself outside of my comfort zone, ask questions when I don't know something, even just advocate for my patients when they really are in their most vulnerable state. They're laying in those rooms, looking at those four walls and flipping through those same channels on the TV screen. They don't really have a voice that they can bring to the doctors. So it's really my job to advocate for them and really make sure that their voice is being heard. And through NSNA and being involved in organizations like that, I learned that it's important to really show up for others and show others that your voice does have value, even when you're just still learning.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Michelle. And I guess I never really thought about how interacting in any profession before you actually step into that full role would help with things that maybe not necessarily clinical, but truthfully, communication is such a huge part of our profession and of many professions that just having that ability to interact with not only your peers, but those who are mentoring you, those who've been in the profession for a long time, and having that ability to communicate not only things that you need, but the way to like phrase things and talk to people in a way that yields results. And I think it helps you to build that confidence that a lot of times when you're new to a role, that's really what you're spending a lot of time doing, right? You're trying to develop a confidence that you can do this, that you have what you need to be able to fulfill that. And I can see how kind of testing the waters in SNA and having those communication experiences allowed you to step in feeling more confident, right? Because you've spoken in front of groups of people, you've asked and answered tough questions. And I can just see how being in those roles as a student would certainly set you up for quick success when it comes to, those hard conversations, those difficult moments, those interactions, whether it be with patients, family, or providers, or even other coworkers and colleagues. Like you can just see how that spillover would happen. And I'm so glad to hear that you stepped into your role as a nurse, but also you're doing it with the strength and confidence that comes from those experiences that you got as a student. And hopefully, if anyone who's a student who's listening to this, or maybe you're new to nursing and you're like, man, I don't feel that confident when it comes to X, Y, and Z, or there is a place where you can gain that confidence and you can gain those experiences, which then will help you directly at the bedside. So I think it's super cool. I love that you drew that line, and I hope it encourages other people to do the same.
Yeah, I think it's the whole topic of communication and nursing, I think could be a very long one because it's super valuable. I think it's extremely important to our profession. And, obviously with the things that you have already discussed with NSNA, there's been a lot of that's fostered growth and development there. But, I am curious if we look at nursing school and the time that you have spent in nursing school and we all go through a nursing program in our lives to become nurses. If you were to put NSNA aside for a moment and some of the other volunteer work that you've done and just think on the actual program, the classes, the clinicals, all of the different components of getting through a nursing program, graduating, what do you feel has really helped prepare you to become a nurse? And what are some of the things that you feel like, wow, I wish I would have really focused a little more on that? I can tell you for myself, working immediately in the emergency department, in nursing school, didn't put a whole lot of time into the OB/GYN labor and delivery kind of portion of the nursing program, knowing that's not where I was ever going to work. And looking back, I thought, I wish I would have paid more attention because we have a lot of these emergencies coming through the doors, and I feel a little inept at times. So just curious what your perspectives are of some of the things that you learned in nursing school and what really helped prepare you for your role, and what are some of the things that you wish you had a little bit more of?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, really looking back, during my nursing program, I don't think it was just one single experience that truly helped best prepare me. I think it was the accumulation of everything that I've went through. Nursing school was really intense, but being involved outside of class, I think is what truly prepared me. So clinicals, when I jumped into those my sophomore year, it really taught me how unpredictable healthcare can be. You'll never have the same two patients. No shift will ever be the same. The outcomes, they'll never be the same either. And going through those clinicals really helped push me to adapt quickly and think on my feet. I also volunteered as an EMT during my time in the nursing program. And that just reminded me that care does go beyond tasks and medications. The care is also rooted in empathy, presence and connection and the communication that we just spoke about. So things like that, I really helped pick up on during my time in nursing school, and as well as research. That also taught me how to think critically and just to question different assumptions that I might have and just look behind the surface level information that I might experience. So I was able to work in the ICU, fortunately, as an intern during nursing school. And that was a huge turning point during my time in nursing school. It really helped force me to kind of sit with that discomfort and to slow down, to really understand the why behind every decision that I was making. And like you said, you also worked in the ER, and I was fortunate enough to be able to work as a nursing assistant there for 2 years. And that also showed me the most powerful factor of nursing, which is teamwork. And I saw that in its rawest form. And we all really relied upon each other when things got very chaotic, especially during those code blues. You never know what's going to come through those doors. And all of these experiences throughout nursing school, the research I was in, the clinicals, the classes itself, where I learned the educational factor. And all of these experiences together showed me that it's not that being a good nurse is about perfection. It's about being present, especially with your patients, being adaptable, and the power of humility.
Absolutely it is. And once you have started it in the role as an RN, do you feel that there's different areas in nursing school you wish you would have had a little bit more to that you would have learned, or do you feel like everything you learn has really set you up for where you are today?
I think that nursing school definitely taught me a lot about the different situations I might see and just the different kind of task-based stuff that I might witness. But I think what it hasn't truly showed me that you really do learn on the job is just the mental and emotional weight that you see in the profession, and just learning how to manage so many different things happening at the same time. You have multiple patients. You also want to do everything right, but you just feel that pressure that, you don't want to miss anything for your patient. And that can be overwhelming. And that's something that wasn't truly emphasized in nursing school. And that's something that you do see on the job. On my floor, it can get very chaotic very quickly. And you're juggling, new admissions with other patients who are becoming hemodynamically unstable. And those are the days that I go home replaying everything in my head, thinking, what could I have done differently? And I truly learned that growth does live in that discomfort. And I'm learning to give myself grace and trust that confidence comes with time. So that's something that nursing school could definitely emphasize a little bit more. But I also understand that that is something that you will most likely be learning on the job itself.
It definitely, they say nursing is an art, and I think there's a lot of art to navigating some of those challenges as well. And there's so much to learn, and it's hard to pack it all into a single nursing program. But, it's great to know that the things that you've experienced are very similar to other things that we've heard. It's good to know that even though it's difficult sometimes, it's definitely not this random one-off finding. It's something that, we consistently hear from others, that being able to juggle the different tasks and the different things that are needed to prioritize and reprioritize is one of those things that's difficult for people coming out of nursing school. And clearly, you've been handling it well since you've graduated. And congratulations again on becoming a nurse. But we certainly understand that there's a lot of things out there that people need to learn as a nurse. And I think between, your answer previously about growing in communication and also following up with that on saying that there's a lot of concern with being able to navigate the challenges of reprioritization. I think a lot of that goes hand in hand. Again, I said we could talk a long time about communication. We could talk a long time about prioritization, but I'll turn it over to Holly.
As you were talking about that kind of application of nursing school principles and clinicals, and then, of course, all the things that you were able to experience because you were working and doing things as an EMT and as a student nurse and research. I mean, you were super busy during nursing school and just kind of accumulating all of this knowledge. And then when you step into your role as a nurse, in my mind, it's the application of that. And truthfully, in nursing, you see it all the time. I'm a huge proponent of simulation training and doing things that help people kind of walk through an experience, maybe at a different pace, and like have time to debrief and talk about it. And you can simulate things all of the time, but there isn't an exact replication for real life application. There's never going to be the same exact ability to set that up in a sim environment. You can get real close, right? And I feel like nursing school is that kind of simulation environment where you're learning things maybe at a different pace. So that way you can take that knowledge and assimilate it and apply it. And then when you get out of nursing school and you start in your clinical rotation as a new nurse, that is that application, right? So you've been training for this, you've been working really hard, and now you're out there. And it's like, okay, now I'm applying this to like real patients with real hopes and real desires for their health. And as you said, there's no two patients that are the same, right? There's no shift that's the same. And so there's just this, you go from nursing school, which sometimes it feels like day to day, you're like living the same day over and over again, right? Like learn stuff, test, repeat. And
Mhm.
now you're out there and it's like no shift is the same, right? Like no patient is the same. Nobody looks like the textbook, right? So that's that huge learning curve, right? And I to your point, I think being able to wrap some of those experiences as a student nurse to real patients in real environments, I think it helps that transition period greatly. And I will say that my new grad orientation to the emergency department was 3 months. And I had friends who were going into different, departments, and theirs was a bit more abridged than that. And I remember thinking, gosh, am I just like a slow learner? And then at the end of 3 months, I was like, I don't know enough. You can't
Mhm.
possibly let me out to see real patients on my own. And so I feel that new grad orientation is a huge part of that transition from being a student nurse to taking on your own patients and giving care. So just thinking about that period, because it hasn't been too long, but it is in hindsight for you now. What would you say was kind of the most rewarding part of your new grad orientation? And then maybe flipping that as well to say what was the most challenging part for you? Because I know every new grad orientation can look a little bit different depending on the unit, depending on the hospital, depending on the organization, depending on the nurse, truthfully. And so, what was just super rewarding for you? And then also maybe what challenged you the most?
Mhm. So that's a great question. So my new grad orientation has been 3 months. So I've been on my own for the past 2 months now. And I would say that the most rewarding part thus far has just been the moments when you realize, wow, I'm actually doing this. And when something clicks, you're like, you have that aha moment, that light bulb goes off. And you have those moments where you catch something early and you witness, a patient might be going into unstable situation and you're able to catch that earlier on. Or when a patient just trusts me. And I think that's huge, just the little things like that where they're able to put their full support in you and they know that you've got their back. And I remember a patient once told me, Michelle, you made me feel human again. I can't thank you enough. And I think moments like that just reminded me why I chose this profession and why I keep coming back every day to the hospital because all these patients, they're so vulnerable. It's the hardest day of their life. They really have nothing to fall back on other than you and the people who are supporting them at the bedside. And to have that support from them and to have that comfort and knowing that you're able to help them in some way, I think that is one of the most rewarding things about the job, and to be able to go back every day and be able to deliver the best possible care to your patients. It hasn't been easy peasy lemon squeezy every shift, definitely not. There's been moments where you really think back and you look, wow, this has been a really hard shift, and there are things that you see and experience that you think you will never see again in your life, and those are the hardest parts, the ones that really mentally and emotionally weigh on you. It's, your first code blue as the primary nurse that I experienced a couple weeks ago, where you're standing there a little bit in shock, but also worry, what's going to happen to my patient? I really want them to have a good possible outcome. And you're doing everything you possibly can, but in the back of your mind is very fuzzy and blurry, and you've never experienced something like this before. And moments like this really define my new grad orientation, my nursing profession thus far. And that's been one of the toughest things, is going through those patients scenarios and juggling all these different aspects of the nursing career.
Well, there's certainly a lot to juggle, Michelle, and I'm sure you're doing a fantastic job of it. And I certainly understand your feelings when you talk about going through with your first patient that's coded and being the primary nurse. It's a lot different, I feel, working on an inpatient unit versus being in an emergency setting when you don't really have that rapport
Mhm.
built up with a lot of patients in the emergency setting versus when it's an inpatient setting and there's this person there that you may have cared for several hours or several days, and then
Mhm.
that situation happens, and it is very different and it's very difficult. So certainly understand what you're talking about there, and thankful to know that you have a good support system around you for
Mhm.
each part of your nursing journey as well. And, speaking of a support system, I know in terms of your career, you're early in your nursing career, but you've certainly been very actively involved in nursing for a number of years already. But
Mhm.
is there a certain person or a moment early on in your career that's already had a big impact on you, or some way that you see yourself as a nurse that's really been impacted by a particular time or a particular person?
Yeah, so recently, even just stepping onto the unit, it wasn't just one specific person, but I've been fortunate enough where most of the nurses on the unit were able to take me under their wing, and they didn't make me feel small for asking questions. And they were the ones who said, you're doing better than you think, when I was truly doubting myself during that time. And that kind of support really stayed with me and will continue staying with me throughout my time on the floor. There wasn't one big dramatic moment, as they say. It was really the quiet ones, whether it was just a nurse checking in on me after a tough shift, or my preceptor trusting me with more responsibility. And I think those moments helped me start seeing myself not just as a new grad, but as a nurse and someone who is really capable of, growing and deserving that place at the bedside. And fortunately, I was able to, keep in touch with a lot of my professors and advisors through nursing school. And even during my new grad orientation, I'm always, reaching out to them and asking them, how could I have done this differently, or how can I improve on this? And my nursing professors, I've been so fortunate to have them in my life, where they're able to kind of guide me throughout this process, and they're able to be with me every step of the way.
I love to hear that, Michelle. Not only that you've kept up with some of the your teachers and advisors from nursing school. I think that's super cool. I'm sure on their side, I know it's cool for you, but like I'm sure from their side, just to hear from a student and hear how their progress is going and how the real world has measured to their, training. I'm sure that's just a really very fulfilling relationship for them to continue. And also, I just love to hear that you've been embraced by the nurses on your unit. I can say that I've heard stories where that is not the case, and it always just kind of, it breaks my heart a little bit to hear when new nurses on a new unit don't have that kind of embracing moment. But I love to hear that that is what you've experienced, and that curiosity is a great thing in our profession. And I think that truly wasn't given enough room, especially for those who are young to the profession. And so the fact that you were encouraged to ask questions and to be that curious person that you're asking, questions so you can be informed, so you can give good care, and seeing that the heart of your curiosity isn't to undo, but more to help you understand and to promote your growth. And then I know that whenever I was orienting someone new and they would ask questions, it would help me to learn and to feel stronger and more confident in what I was doing. And so I would say, like, the only question that I would consider dumb is the one you don't ask before you go do something dumb. So I think that when you have that mentality, when you're like, hey, just ask the question. And if I'm like, hey, I feel like we've covered this, let's make sure that we're retaining some of this. I know hard shifts can make information fall out the back of your head, but I think there's a place where, as a new colleague, when you're encouraged to ask questions, when you're encouraged to, hey, you're part of the team and we want to make sure that your transition from a student nurse to a new nurse goes as smoothly as possible. And we can't account for like terrible shifts. We can't account for really hard patients. We can't account for family members that maybe have missed expectations and their disappointment shows in a way that's just really hard to kind of move through and move past. And so, like, there are certain things that I can't account for when I'm orienting somebody. But one thing that I hope that people that come onto a unit feel is like, we're glad that you're here and we want to do our best to set you up for success. So I love hearing that. It makes my heart just like really happy, really proud of the nurses on your unit. Like, way to go. You guys are doing great. And so, yeah, so I love to hear that. And I'm sure as your career extends, you will have more of these, as you put them, these quiet moments that really help to anchor you in the profession. Because, yeah, there's big moments that kind of will live forever in your heart and mind. But really, it's those little moments that kind of keep you in the profession for a long career. So, love to hear that. I get a chance to ask you a few rapid fire questions. They are a little bit different because, well, Michelle, we want to ask some questions while you're still kind of new to this whole nursing career. And I am actually really interested in this because right now you're on a cardiovascular telemetry unit. You've had some experience as a student nurse in the ICU and emergency, pre-hospital. So, you have some experience and now you're getting even more. So if you could spend a few days exploring any nursing specialty, which one would you choose and why?
Honestly, that's a really great question. I've always been in love with cardiology and critical care, and I've been super into, exploring that profession even further as a new nurse. But I have actually looked into different professions, even just throughout nursing school, and I thought it was fascinating. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but working on a yacht as a nurse. I saw that in an article and I was like, wait, that sounds so fascinating. And just being on the ship or even just like being on the Navy as a Navy nurse or being involved in like an ROTC type of organization or being like on the front lines as like an army medic or things along that lines. I've always been kind of fascinated in that profession and I really wanted to explore it further. So who knows where my career might take me, but that's something that I was kind of like looking into, especially during nursing school as well.
That's really cool. I will say two things. The first time I ever heard about like a cruise ship nurse, I was like, wait, what? And I met one on a cruise ship and they like just talked to me about it. I was like, wait, how do you live? And what do you do?
Yes.
Because it's not that I didn't realize that there is healthcare happening when people are on cruises, but like I just never thought about that as like an option,
Yeah.
And I feel like in nursing, there's so many options, the ones we're aware of, but there's even options that we're not aware of. And to your point, Michelle, a yacht nurse, okay. I think it's really cool that you're kind of looking at nursing specialties that put you in a place where kind of your resources may be a little bit limited, but your application of care
Mhm.
is going to make such a huge impact, right? Because you're basically like on this floating vessel with just what you have to take care of patients. And I find that type of nursing fascinating. And I think it's so critical to have a really well-rounded nurse in that kind of environment because you can be taking care of something pretty simple, and straightforward, or you can be taking care of something really complex that, far outweighs your resources. And how do you manage that? So I can understand why the appeal is there for sure. And that's really fascinating to me, Michelle. I can't wait to hear, in a few years if you're like, yeah, I'm on a yacht in the middle of, I don't know, the Pacific. I don't know, but like doing something where you're like, yeah, I'm gonna try this out and see a little bit of the world too, because that's fun.
Yeah, because I love to travel. I'm so big on just exploring, new countries and new places and really immersing myself into the country's culture and cuisine. So really just traveling the world and even on a yacht or a cruise ship. I don't know. That sounds really fascinating to me.
That's fun. Well, I do have some favorites to ask of you, and
Mhm.
I am on a quest to read several books this year. So I'm going to ask you, for my own selfish knowledge, favorite book, or maybe it's a quote that really inspires you.
There's actually a quote that one of the nurse residents spoke during the program, and it did stick with me. And I've had heard of this quote before, and it's a quote by Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And it just really stuck with me, especially, working as a nurse and going to patients at the bedside. They'll always remember how you made them feel. I always try to go to the bedside with a smile on my face and really just show my genuine side and show them that I'm really here for them for whatever they might need. And I want them to trust me in whatever that they might need. So, really being able to be there for them on the hardest day of their life and making them feel supported and having them know that I'm here for them every step of the way. I think that's something that I really want to take through my profession as a nurse and beyond.
What a great quote. I would tell people all the time. Often, when patients come to the emergency department, we don't offer them a full diagnosis, right? We can't always tell them, like, hey, this is what's going on, right? We can
Mhm.
tell them a lot of like what's not going on, like, hey, we've ruled out a lot of things.
Yeah.
But when we can't offer them a definitive diagnosis necessarily, we can offer them kindness. You can offer kindness to every single patient. That we can do. And it didn't cost me anything. Well, I say that. Maybe sometimes it would cost me a little bit of time, maybe sometime a little bit of pride, setting aside, the way that you maybe see somebody
Mhm.
or have experienced someone. But it didn't, it certainly wasn't anything that cost me more than I could give. And I think that what you said, that's what people remember, right? Because again, there's a lot of things we can't give to patients, right? I wish that we could give them everything their hearts desired and meet all of their expectations, and sometimes we can't give that, but what we can give, I think we should meet with kindness, and like you said, a ready smile and an ability to engage with them where they're at. So great. Love that. Okay. Favorite movie, TV show, binge-worthy series.
Ooh, well, a good one that I've been binging has been The Pit. Absolutely amazing. I love it. It just shows like the raw emotional side of emergency medicine, but also the empathy that a lot of these doctors show. And it's just been a series that I fell in love with, and I think a lot of people have as well.
Growing up, I was a fan of ER. So when Noah Wiley took
Mhm.
on the pit, I was just like, man, what's this going to be like? And I've just
Mhm.
resoundingly heard such fantastic feedback and so many ways that nurses and people in healthcare feel represented in a positive light, but also just in a real light. I think that's the hard thing. And you'll continue to find this as you progress in your career, that there just aren't enough ways to communicate what happens shift to shift and perhaps how you feel about a certain shift or how you feel about your profession or how you feel about even yourself. And I think it's important that people have an ability to glimpse what that might be like, right? I think, people in my family who are not in healthcare, it's hard to explain sometimes some of the things that you've seen, some of the things that
Mhm.
you've been part of. And I think when they watch a show that tries to give the realness and the rawness of it, I think it helps to bring them to a place where they can be even more empathetic. And also that you don't have to then sit down and try to explain everything. Because I think sometimes that's hard too. I'm just like,
Yep.
I just don't want to talk about it. And it's like, but I need to talk about it. But it's really cool when you can be like, yes, what is happening right now, that look on their face, that heartbreak or that pause or that just random sarcastic comment, that's what I live. And so I think it is really cool that that show is out there and hopefully it continues not only to be a success for what it is, but that it continues to represent the heart of so many people who are in healthcare. Great recommendation. All right. Favorite song, musical artist, something that just can
Ooh,
move you, maybe help you get to a good place. What would you
yes.
have for us?
I'm a big dancer. I love to dance. So I don't know if you guys have heard of the song Coco Jambu by Mr. President. Love it. Or Pocketful of Sunshine by Natasha Bedingfield. Amazing songs. Always gets me in the dancey mood. Whenever I'm feeling sad or need a little pick me up, definitely put on my dancing clothes and get out there and dance a little bit to those songs.
I love that when I'm talking about something that can instantly move you, your mind's like, I will dance. And I think that there are people who maybe would not dance outwardly, but I love it when they can find something that just helps to like move them, move your mind to a different place, take your thoughts and put them maybe from where they were to maybe a just a place of calm, peace, excitement, joy, whatever that might be. And I think music is such a great medium to do that.
Mhm.
And I love your choices. I wrote down your first one because I have to go back and listen to that.
Oh my
And
gosh,
your
fun one.
second one, I mean, Pocket Full of Sunshine, let's go.
Come
Like
on.
it's yeah, that's a good classic one. I'm glad you brought that back up. I will have to listen to that today because it's already in my head. So the only way to get it out is to actually play
Right?
it. So
Exactly.
okay. This is a really important question, and I think it's something hopefully that you've already set up for yourself. But I'm going to go ahead and ask it because if someone new to the profession can lock in on this, then people who've been doing it for a while, and if you don't have something of self-care, you need to lock it in. So,
Mhm.
Michelle, what is your self-care go-to or something that helps you reset?
Yes. So I'm a big proponent on just really going outside, getting some fresh air, especially when the weather's nice. Now it's a little brisk, it's a little chilly, but even just, going outside and taking a walk outside really helps me kind of put me back into that mental reset, or even just opening up a good book or watching a good show. Spending time with family and friends is a big one to me. I love spending time with the people I love and care about. It really helps me bring all that energy back. And I'm a social butterfly, so I love being around people and talking to people and doing things that I love just, helps me bring me back out of that funk. But I'm just so blessed to be surrounded by such a good group of nurses at my workplace. So I'm just really happy to say that I call a lot of them my friends now. So being surrounded by so much positive energy in my life has been a blessing.
I love that you not only have kind of like your village and your support system, but you make time to do things that help you and take time to do that. So, very important. My last question is, Michelle, if people wanted to connect with you, is there a social media or some way that they could reach out to you if they wanted to connect with you?
Definitely. They can always, shoot me that LinkedIn request. It's just my first and last name, Michelle Novominski. If they want to follow me on Instagram as well, it's just Michelle Novo underscore.
Amazing. I'll make sure to put that in the blog for this episode. So, thanks for sharing all that, Michelle. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you guys so much for having me.
It's been great chatting with you, Michelle. And, as Holly mentioned at the beginning, we met you a while back at the NSNA conference, and it's been really cool just following the progression of your career and all of the things that you did prior to becoming a nurse that really have helped set you up for success. And even since becoming a nurse, the way that you're actively engaged in the nursing profession, I think it's just a really great example and a good role model to others of what nursing is about. And that's community and connectedness and being engaged actively in the profession to not only help your career grow yourself, but to help others. And so it's been really great chatting with you today and hearing all of the wonderful things that you're doing. And we certainly wish you all the best in your future endeavors. And we are excited to see what next steps your career growth will have.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I want to take a moment to thank Michelle for joining us for this episode of BCN and Friends. Michelle, your fresh perspective and enthusiasm for nursing brings such a light to a profession that faces hard and heavy challenges every shift. We're certain your journey is just beginning and that your impact will ripple far beyond where you are today. We look forward to seeing all that you accomplish. That's a wrap for this episode of Be Seen and Friends. Don't miss what's next. You can subscribe, share, and join the conversation by scanning the QR code for Learn updates in this episode blog. Got a topic you'd like us to cover? You can drop us a line at bcn@bcn.org. I'm Holly Briggs with Michael Dexter, and we're proud to celebrate your dedication to nursing across the emergency spectrum. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected. We're out.